How's everyone doing? Good?
Ooh, we got a dog on screen.
Awesome.
Oh, that's a good dog.
Her
Oh,
name.
how sweet.
I brought her to say hi to HackFS, man.
How sweet. Hi.
She's
What's her
looking
name?
for the interplanetary
Good
dog
job.
biscuit. Interplanetary dog biscuit.
Oh my God. I can't see any eyes. It's just black. Everything's
Black void. Andrew, are we good?
We're good. Stream is
All right.
up.
Enough talking about the dog. We can get back to that later. Welcome everybody to the last event of week 0. It's pretty incredible that we had, I think, 5 or 6 events already, and the hackathon hasn't started. So congrats. I know a bunch of people have gone to these workshops this week. Hopefully you learned something. If you haven't heard my spiel before about what this is going to be, today's or tonight's, wherever you are, this morning's session is a little bit more flexible, more open-ended. Juan's going to be sort of leading, but everybody else is free to kind of jump in and pitch their ideas. He's going to be pulling from the 100 hackathon ideas sheet that we put together last week. Hopefully you've had a chance to look through it, see some of the concepts he and others have written. If somebody can grab that and drop it in the chat while I'm rambling, that would be good. Yeah, so we're just gonna talk. It'll be an open session, and hopefully people get inspired. They come away with maybe a different idea than what they had before, or a more solid understanding of what they were already gonna build. I don't need to intro Juan, which is good. That means less work for me. Yeah, and I'll before we wrap at the end, I'll just go over staking and the kickoff on Monday. But most of you probably already know that kickoff on Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And the final thing before we jump into it all, we're gonna play one of those games again, where you turn on your video and let's see what we can do this time. Pick up the most random object on your desk. The most random object wins the session. All right, we got a wine opener, IPFS award, a carved elephant. Tarun, is that a box of beans?
Brains. Brains. It's a box of brains.
Brains.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, this might be cheating, but I think Andrew might have the strangest thing, probably because most of you can't tell what it is. It's like a holder of some sort. Also,
doodle toy.
An alien antenna.
Yeah, it's my homemade iPad thing.
Homemade. Okay, I think that takes it. Homemade iPad thing. Cool. Feel free to keep your videos on because we're gonna. It's just nice to see faces, like I said. So maybe we'll jump in and we can get a second place weird object later on. I don't know. Juan, unmute, take it away. Let's jump into it.
Awesome. Thanks. Great. So really excited to brainstorm today. I think we have a whole bunch of different directions that we have to explore. So I wanted to kind of go through kind of the structure of how I am thinking about the session. So I'm gonna ask everyone to open this doc, and I'm gonna share my screen and then guide us that way. Let's see. So here's how I'm planning to do this. I'm gonna just give a brief overview of the session, and then gonna discuss a little bit how to brainstorm really well as a group. It is non-trivial to brainstorm well as a group, and so I'm gonna go over a few kind of rules for how to make it really good. And then I'm gonna have some inspiration time where I'm gonna talk about a whole bunch of. I'm gonna show you a bunch of images and talk about a whole set of ideas, and then I want to go into kind of various different sections. Sweet. So the kind of rules of brainstorming, how to brainstorm as a group. The most important thing about brainstorming as a group is to be super generative. to open your mind and let yourself come up with ideas and bounce on the ideas of other people. And the best way to think about this is the yes and principle of theater improv. How many people are familiar with yes and from improv? All right, awesome. Who wants to take a stab at describing it? I'm gonna call Govind. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Yeah, Govind. I also go by Gov. But yes and is basically just you set a scenario, and I add something, and the partner has to say yes and continue and say something else, and you basically just keep playing off this whatever you build with each other.
Yeah, exactly. So it turns out that whenever we say an idea and somebody else rejects it, that kind of shuts down our generative brainstorming ability. And so for the most part, when you take a very positive, go with the flow, go with the last idea and build on it, figure out how to make that idea even better, like take the suggestion, accept it, and build on it, that ends up being super good for brainstorming, and it lets you go really quickly through a ton of ideas together. And so it's a way for a lot of our brains together to connect and come up with a bunch of ideas. So yeah, yes and. So if you hear an idea, yes, accept it and build on it and come up with something else. Normally in a lot of tech environments, usually because of how technology works and how engineering works, there's usually a much more kind of rigorous no first approach of saying, oh, here's like you hear an idea and immediately you're like, oh, here's why that wouldn't work, or like that sounds like it's not going to work because of this and so on. Just completely suppress that. Like this is not a time for no's. So don't think about like why that wouldn't work or something like that. Think about like just ignore that for now. The whole goal of this session is just generate ideas. So don't get stuck on being like, oh, like that sounds silly, that wouldn't work, I'm not going to suggest this. Or if you hear somebody else's idea and you're like, oh, I don't think that sounds good or whatever, just think about like, imagine that whatever problems it may have don't exist, and think of like, hey, that's a really cool idea. What else could you do with that? Like, how could you go from that to something even better or something different? Or think about that idea and vary one thing, and then like, what does it turn into? So be focused on generative and kind of positive yes and thinking. So one kind of quick rule about the document, we're going to be kind of writing things into this document together. So don't delete anything. So if somebody else writes an idea, it's their sentence, that's fine. Yeah, yes and no, don't get stuck in kind of deleting something. And then feel very free to like copy, paste, and remix. Like you see something really cool, oh, that's awesome. Like copy it, paste it, and like change a thing, and like boom, new idea. And so like really be super free to kind of remix a bunch of things. Then of course remember there's a HackFS code of conduct. There's a whole set of ideas here. I think this is probably like the only case where like it's not yes and, it's like wait, hold up, maybe not that idea. Just remember the code of conduct and keep it a good and a positive environment for everyone. And so yeah, I think I think everyone should be familiar with the code of conduct by now. And then feel free to add emojis to things you like. That can be super motivating to people that come up with ideas, or can help attract attention and be like, oh, that's really cool. Heart emojis are good. So this document has a whole bunch of space for a bunch of things. Like, of course, we're not going to go through 22 pages of stuff in one session, but the point is to be able to let all of us roam into the different areas of the doc to kind of write things that we find interesting and cool and whatnot. And so as I go into some of the inspiration session, or as we're gonna break up and go into kind of sections by sections, we can just think of like, if you think of an idea that's kind of fits that category, yeah, just feel free to kind of write it down and come up with something. And so maybe look at it's really helpful to have the document outline on. I don't know if it defaults for you to have it on, but that lets you kind of scan the list on the left, a whole bunch of different areas for of kind of what's here. So I'm gonna rattle off a bunch of so because the goal is kind of inspiring things and so on, I'm gonna rattle off some of the different areas. I'm just gonna scan through the document so you get an idea of like the possibilities and you get a little bit of a lay of the land. And by the way, if you come up with a different use case that's like not here, like feel free to add it, like it's totally fine. Just be aware that once we get into like writing, the part of the reason why there's a lot of blank spots is that it makes it a lot easier for us to write. If a lot of people are kind of like pressing enter many times, then it can get kind of funky to have a lot of us editing one document like this. I hopefully should be good, but yeah, we'll try it out. All right, so I put actually networking at the beginning because it's kind of concrete, and it can get us to thinking about a set of things very quickly. So and then from that we'll kind of like expand out. But here are some categories around networking. So connections and relays, like what happens when you have like a bunch of different nodes connecting to each other. There's traffic flowing. Are there kind of tools and apps around measuring traffic or being able to pay for traffic or things like that? PubSub is a whole category of techniques around networking where you're able to like spread messages, and maybe those messages are directed to a specific topic or a specific application. And right now, most PubSub things are not incentivized. Maybe they could be incentivized or something like that. There are local area networks where you may be disconnected from the rest of the world, and you might have you have a set of devices and they can talk to each other. What cool things can you build with like connecting applications that rely on just local connectivity? Then anything related to browsers, like there might be we might come up with a bunch of things that are about making it easier to interact with decentralized applications from the browser. We might come up with cool things around domain names and how to point some short string to content or applications. We might get into kind of large scale network testing and visualizing that or something like that. And speaking of visualizations, we might get into like really cool ways of like looking at networks and traffic on networks. And being able to kind of explore what are all the parties and all of the different things that are in the network. All right, let's go. Then there's kind of a category around markets and DeFi. So think about we're going to be talking about the storage market and what happens when you have storage providers and miners that store a bunch of data and serve it to other people. Can you pick miners? Are miners all the same, or is there kind of like a marketplace view to them? What happens when you're able to kind of like select between a set of miners and their different profiles and different properties? Retrieval is a whole other part of this. There might be many parties that have data that they want to serve it to you, and there might be a bunch of tools and applications just around how do you retrieve things better, faster, cheaper from specific regions with specific properties. There might be a whole set of things around tooling for storage mining. So if you are going to be storing a lot of stuff for other parties, and you're going to be kind of a service provider or a storage miner, there might be a whole host of tools around that. Then there are things like data markets, being able to store and host data that you then are able to sell, like valuable. Like think about valuable data that people can sell access to. Then you get into things like randomness and what might you do with unbiasable randomness in markets. You can do things like lotteries and games and things of that nature where being able to kind of rely on a random selection that everybody can trust could be useful. Then you get into things like loan markets, not in like the traditional DeFi sense, but hey, there's going to be a whole bunch of parties participating in this large network, making deals and putting collaterals and so on. And there's parties that have storage, and hardware, but less money. There are parties that have money, and maybe there's kind of like a loan market structure that can emerge there. Then get into like broader kind of applications on top of storage. So what happens what kinds of like dApps could you make? That's super broad. That's like why I didn't start with that one. It's like not very concrete. Are there tools or things that around websites? How do you make it like easier to publish or view or find websites on the decentralized web? Maybe there are tools around files and data. How do you make it easier to import certain kinds of files, or ways of structuring a file to make it easier to navigate or to view? There might be things around collaborative clusters where, hey, a set of people really like or really want to preserve some specific data because it's important and valuable to them. How do you enable them to get together, address that data, and store it and serve it together? Then there's verifiable storage. What happens when you're able to certify with a cryptographic proof that you are indeed storing something? That becomes a really useful property. What kinds of things really care to know that the data is there and want a cryptographic proof to know that the thing is not missing? Might be a whole kinds of things like that. Then you get into kind of like the realm of dynamic apps and like what happens with things like chat and social networks or games and so on. How do you make those in a decentralized storage network? Then there might be things around version control and version control of files and version control of directories or version control of data sets, large scientific data sets. Then there could be something around content discovery. How do you find different things like there's interesting pieces of content or interesting pieces, websites and so on. How do you do discovery on a decentralized network that is a little bit different than the normal search problem? Then we get into kind of things like developer tooling, like what can you do with payment and state channels, right? There's all kinds of really cool applications of payment and state channels, and we have the Ethereum and Filecoin payment channels to work with. There's a whole bunch of other state channels. This is maybe you can mix that with like the PubSub thing before and like do an incentivized PubSub thing. Then there are things like gateways and pinning services and other nodes and service providers in the network. Then there are things like private networks, where some group of people want to operate in a network that's cordoned off, and maybe it's like a company that just wants to connect to certain parties, or maybe it's a different application that just wants to connect separately. Then there are things like hosted APIs and analytics and metrics and bots and so on, things related to GitHub and GitLab that are all kind of like developer oriented. Cool, and there's some like general things like games and video and audio, like what can you do with libraries of these things, or make a game. Things like photos and streaming and news and media. What happens to news and media when you can certify that the information is there or that it hasn't changed? Like how many websites out there, how many newspapers out there change their wording, and you have to like catch that. What can you do with art? And when you mix it with crypto and think of NFTs and so on. Maybe there's the metaverse and being able to kind of explore a decentralized space together. And then there's developer assets, things like containers and VMs and packages and code. What can you do with moving around that in a decentralized way? Then there's like traditional storage things like personal files and org files, scientific data sets, large data sets, certificates and provenance, sensor networks, medical data, offline first. Yeah, this gets longer. So and these are, I'm sure a lot of you have seen a number of these kinds of use cases before. All right, so this is a very long list. I got tired even just saying it, let alone like we're not gonna go through all of it together. The goal is to give you a sample, and each of you is gonna gravitate to a different area. Each of you is probably getting pretty excited about one part of this and not others. And so the goal of the session is to kind of inspire us, and then we'll have some time individually to then kind of explore the areas that we want to explore. And so we'll kind of like have a moment of breaking off where we can go and navigate into those. And then we'll have some time together to kind of like go through a few of them and kind of talk about them and see if that sparks more ideas. All right, enough of listing. I'm gonna show some images, and then kind of hopefully that'll help inspire things. And so this is kind of some random selection from previous talks that I've given. So it's kind of like it's not like a really good comprehensive view, but maybe some of these things might inspire ideas. And maybe, in fact, what I'll do is I'll add kind of a source of inspiration at the very top if you want to put links to other things. Cool. I'm gonna go through this kind of quickly. It's just flashing some images. I'm gonna skip things that have text, so don't worry about it too much. Things like video publishing, things like social media, dApps, games and game distribution, virtual world data. There's all kinds of awesome stuff happening in decentralized and crypto voxels. And all of that is still mostly hosted in centralized things. Developer assets, data sets, scientific data sets. Making things peer-to-peer. What happens when you disconnect from the centralized servers? What happens when you're in a local area network, and what kind of information can you move around that way? Sorry, it's just like a whole bunch of different applications and systems, domains, music, marketplaces, being able to sell stuff, other kinds of marketplaces, stores, a lot of DeFi. What happens about important humanitarian causes, being able to distribute content that various people want to shut down. Pinning services and other tools for the network. Let's get this. Optimization and verifiable storage. Being able to map the network and see who's where. A storage market where you have many providers that you can get quotes from. Retrieval and being able to move around the data and get it to being able to move around the data to various locales and distribute it faster by being able to rely on the people that just received it. So think of like an auto scaling CDN kind of thing. Think of like all the different scales of mining. There are tools and things for small miners and tools and things for large miners that are gonna want different things. Think of once you commoditize storage, you have a market, and you have you think of like potentially order books and things where you can have bids and asks on both sides, but those aren't for exchanging currencies or for buying storage. Could you have like a real-time order book on storage asks and bids? And then think about like marketplaces like Airbnb for a moment. Think of like the UI and UX of being able to navigate and explore a marketplace like Airbnb. What would it look like for this to be kind of like if you're trying to store petabytes of stuff, maybe the map isn't a city, but it's like the world, and you can see various different storage providers around the world. And you can maybe find out more about them, and you can see their profiles. So instead of pictures of rooms, you get pictures of their facilities, and so on. And you maybe can see like their profile, maybe you can contact them, and so on. Here's like the stats dashboard from Filecoin. There's like 17 petabytes, but is all that storage the same? Where is it? What kind of properties does it have? Here's like an example of all of a lot of storage miners from the Filecoin network. There are a whole bunch of facilities. So this is the kind of pictures that could go into profiles, right? Like where you start showing them the marketplace with the facilities and get an understanding of how people are storing the data. So all kind of possible things to build. It's kind of like a product map. Scientific data sets, blockchain explorers, personal file storage, being able to like have think of like a Dropbox style kind of thing, being able to kind of drag and drop stuff into a folder, being able to view it, being able to get verifiable storage and check that the content is truly there and you have proofs. All right, I think that's it for this one. And then on networking, I wanted to show a couple, just because it's cool to see stuff like this. So there's a lot of networks in our world that, in this decentralized and distributed world, where it'd be really, really nice and useful to be able to see and visualize the network flow. And maybe it's a specific protocol, or maybe these are not just specific protocols, but these are like the connections between certain parties in a market or something like that. I think this is like I'll refresh this. A lot of these visualizations break if you like leave them running in the background for a while. Or maybe a computer's like running out of RAM. Yeah, this is a really cool visualization. This is a this is like an order book that yeah, we'll see in a moment. Come on, network. There we go. So this is a real-time view into an order book. This is a bunch of like nodes sending, propagating orders and so on. Being able to like see something like that for the storage market would be really cool. All right. Cool. So that was a lot of stuff. Now I'm gonna give all of us 5 minutes to scan the list and pick one topic that seems really appealing to you. And it doesn't matter if somebody else picks the same thing and is writing around there. Just pick one topic that sounds interesting and appealing, and just start writing ideas there. And if you kind of run dry and you're like, oh, I can't think of anything else, jump to a different topic. And so we'll each do it for 5 minutes, and we'll kind of like write some things, and then we'll check back in 5 and jump to something else together. All right, that was 5 minutes. Let's see some of the things we're coming up with. Whole bunch of stuff around here. I'm just gonna scan through. You can follow along or not. Goal is to like let you kind of read and see if inspires more ideas. I'm all about the memes. Really, all of IPFS is just a meme distribution system. Awesome. A lot of really awesome ideas. This is pretty sweet. Let's keep adding more. I'll flash the 100 hackathon ideas that we've seen before. Like there's probably some stuff here that we can grab. And the goal is for this document here that we're gonna I'm gonna get to translating what's here, what we come up with in this document over to this. So I just wanted to use the Google Doc because it's probably easier to type on this together. I haven't played with Notion and 30 people before, so so this will end up over here. But if you scan this one and you get some good ideas, then you can come up with other stuff. Cool. How about we try another round, another 5 minutes of going into some of this, and then check back in. All right, that was 5 minutes. Let's check. A lot of really awesome ideas. This is really cool. All right, I'm gonna try something that let's see how it goes. I know that Zoom has a way to break out into breakout rooms, so I'm gonna try and like get people talking because that can always like help come up with more ideas. Trent, I think you might, or Andrew, one of you is the host. I think. Do you know how to send people to breakout rooms?
Yeah, Andrew can check, but I think you have to set it up before the meeting.
Oh, really? Bummer.
Yeah, we can check though.
Well, if
anything, we can just start up a couple separate rooms and have people join it.
We might end up spending a lot of time on that, given that there's only 10 more minutes. How about this? We can. I'll plan another brainstorming session for next week, and those folks that want to join, we can do breakouts then.
Yeah,
should have
sure.
mentioned it before. Cool. So if we can't have breakout rooms, what would we all? One other idea that I had was looking at one area together and maybe go through one section together and kind of all of us come up with ideas in that section. And then I got a suggestion for Q&A. Would you prefer to do Q&A, or would you prefer to do kind of all of us look at a section and then kind of give a bunch of ideas in like a couple of minutes and then move to the next section? Raise your hand if you want Q&A. Or raise your hand if you would like to go through a section together. 1, 2, 3.
Also, I don't know how much time you have, Juan, but it's totally fine if we go over. We don't have to end it right at 9. Yeah, this is flexible.
Can we like just aggregate the ideas first and see what the most popular like 5 sections were, and then break up? Then we get kind of the best of both worlds.
Do you have a good way of aggregating them beyond the categories that we have now?
I just pick the ones with the most ones, or I'll give you an example. So say you have a messaging pub sub, then you have encrypted messaging, right? Those two, even though they are in 2 separate sections in the sheet, those kind of come together as one. Now I know now we're starting to do like information sciences. So, but like that's all.
Yeah, because if we spend a lot of time kind of like massaging the document, we'll lose that. We'll waste people's time. So how about but thank you for the suggestion. Let's do some Q&A first and go through some of the questions that people have, and then we'll do some sections. Great. So the people that raise hands for Q&A, do you want to ask questions?
I'm curious, just how's the integration from the browser? Just trading in Filecoin directly from the browser, is that going to plug into something like MetaMask, or just how does that function?
Yeah, great question. So two things. One, there is a JavaScript library already that you can do all the payment signing directly in JavaScript, and so you can submit transactions that way. And I know that there's work on some MetaMask integration to bring I think it's kind of through the MetaMask Snap stuff. But I don't know that that's ready yet. So I think I would recommend checking out the JavaScript library first. Austin?
Hey, this might be a bit of a question out of ignorance, but up until about this week, I was thinking that Filecoin was an ERC20, or and kind of piggybacking off of the last question there on MetaMask. Looking at this sheet of 100 questions there, the store things together suggestion talks about using ETH and a contract that works with Filecoin. And then a couple items down, it says that there's going to be an ETH and Filecoin bridge. So yeah, I'd like to hand that off to you just because I'd like some clarification on that.
Yeah. So Filecoin uses a storage-based consensus protocol where the storage power is the way that kind of like miners gain power in the network. And so there's kind of a block reward associated with that. So Filecoin is its own chain. It ended up becoming a layer 1 chain. It's not clear what like the future holds. It's possible that as the sharding world expands, Filecoin could go into it could work closely with other chains. But for now, it's kind of its own layer 1 chain, and kind of the saturation of throughput in that chain like kind of force that as well. So that means that then we need kind of like bridges over to Ethereum and to other things, so you can have like Ethereum smart contracts calling Filecoin itself from Ethereum. And it also means we can do wrapped Filecoin the same way that there's like wrapped BTC and wrapped other things to let Filecoin tokens write on ETH within ERC20. So that's probably where that comes from.
If I could just add then on that, because the yesterday, maybe the day before, there was the Bidler workshop with Solidity. Is Filecoin smart contracts built with Solidity as well then, or is it a different contract language?
No, great question. So it's right now Filecoin doesn't have the ability to add in your own contract. So think of like putting a contract on Ethereum and then interacting with Filecoin. So you can likely do this with PowerGate, where like you can put a contract with Solidity on Ethereum, and then you have some node kind of watching that contract and then causing operations on Filecoin. Eventually, that bridge is what's gonna make it really easy to do that. There will likely be user level contracts on Filecoin in the future, but that's like a longer term thing. So yeah, if you want for smart contracts, just put a smart contracts on Ethereum and then kind of call things on Filecoin. Cool. Other questions? No, there were 4. Joseph?
Yeah, so just to add on what Austin was going with, I want to know if, is there like some material or some sort of, some training for how to interface with Ethereum and with Filecoin? Like, how do you get the data that's on Filecoin into your Ethereum contract, or how do you do that?
Yeah, great question. So there are some tutorials on how to do that with IPFS right now, where you have the data on IPFS and you can interface a smart contract with IPFS directly. Then so those couple with Filecoin in that once the data's on IPFS, you can just kind of pay on Filecoin to keep it around. But it sounds like a good idea maybe to have a workshop around that, of like how do you mix Ethereum smart contracts with storage on Filecoin and so on. So maybe I can look at like putting something like that together for next week.
That'd be helpful. Thanks.
Cool. Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah, so
Yep.
so basically, I just wanted to ask, like, does Filecoin also supports meta transactions? So let's say I'm running a service and I just want to offer some free storage to my users, so that they have the ownership of the data, but we are just paying the Filecoin on their behalf. So is it something we can support?
Yeah, great question. So right now, not easily. You'd have to, the way to do that is your application can have a wallet associated with that, and then you can just put the Filecoin in that wallet, and the wallet can then pay out that way.
So it means like end user need to hold the Filecoins.
Right now, yes. There's a publisher pays model that is kind of like a good hack to make, where you can give like bearer tokens. So this would be like a great hack idea, right? Like you create a contract on Ethereum where you have like bearer tokens, and so those tokens can be like redeemed for Filecoin to use in the to like retrieve or store stuff.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Other questions? Right now, there's no market where you can purchase Filecoins because it's not live yet. So once it's live, once the mainnet is live, then the markets will come after that. But the test, you can play around in the testnet with like there's a faucet, and you can do it that way. Cool. So let's go through some more ideas together. Let's see. If you have some suggested, so if you want to suggest some topics to jump through, I'll just like take suggestions from the chat, and then I'll kind of follow this. So I see files and data tools has a lot of ideas. Great, let's go to that. All right, sharded secret backups, keep alive plugin for a web app, Keybase like top level separation of files, file chunking helper, proxy re-encryption, CID sum. Yeah, this is like such a needed tool. Integration with Keybase for allowing storing the folder. Yeah, why don't we spend like a couple of minutes, each of us, like writing other things related to this, and then we'll hop to a different topic together. Not everyone at once. Sounds like this one is not very generative. Let's move to a different one. Anybody have other suggestions? How about something related to music and video? How about that? What do we do if we have a bunch of music, right? So we already have like all of the audio's library of music already in HackFS. What can we do with that?
There was two other really good ideas there with the user curated content with voting. That was a really good idea. Whoever posted that one with Spotify, they're like, that was genius. I mean, the user radio stations like just shared and swarmed somehow. That just sounds amazing.
Cool. And what about photos? What can we do with photos?
So I have a question. So normal IPFS, things can fall out of favor. Because one of the issues with storage is, I mean, there's a lot of privacy issues around this. And so you push data out there and you kind of want it to decay. You know, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of issues around this.
This is where I mean, all traffic on the internet is already moved around with just encryption. So if you're moving around data and you're capturing packets in the wire and you can decrypt them later, then it's the same boat. So just apply encryption beforehand and so on. You can maybe the point is like you would like to know who's storing this stuff and where is it. So maybe getting some visibility on that is useful. But if it's ciphertext, is the same model as the current web.
Yeah, as a society, we're gonna have to come to some kind of understanding around this. This is
I mean, point is like it's already messed up, right? Like like just moving around from your phone to like the cloud, like there are so many intermediaries that look at ciphertext. So if they can break the encryption, so there's a world where like if they can break the encryption, they've broken the encryption, right? So if they can't, then it's okay. And then for those cases, like you can already use Textile right now to put all of your photos into a bucket and have a whole gallery or something like that, and then and have it encrypted. That's correct, right, Andrew? Let me know if that's coming. Yeah, so like all of that would already be encrypted with your own key, so only you and the people you share with would be able to see it.
Maybe you could have like tokens for number of views, so that like when they see it, like they run out of tokens, they can't view it anymore, and it has a destructive key or something. I don't know, something like that.
What about use cases where you don't have to worry about encryption? Like what kind of like public uses of photos are there? So there's art galleries. What about other kinds? There's a whole bunch of websites around the web that are about like manipulating images, and all of them really don't need to be paid websites. Nobody has to host those. You could just build an app that does that, and then as long as you can move around the app and it can be loaded in the browser, and you know where to put the data, like you no longer need to like have that stuff be ad driven or anything like that. So there might be a whole bunch of like cool ideas from things like meme generators or filters or image rescaling or editors.
How's the indexing plan for IPFS as a whole? I mean, it's going to get massive for indexing all those images. Because I mean, even though it's true that you could build this decentralized app, I mean, that index would be gigantic.
It's like any application. Like you would have that application would have an index of those systems. Like data structures are good. It's just a matter of like knowing where to put that index and how to access it, how much to access it.
Right. Would we partition? I mean, this probably isn't the call, but like we'd partition it. We'd have to partition that index and spread it.
Yeah. Question: would it be useful for? I mean, I think this list is amazing. We're generating a bunch of like really awesome stuff. Would it be useful to kind of like get questions of like people interested in like knowing how to build some of these things, and then next week we can do like some sessions on actually breaking down into like what technologies you would actually need to make a thing and kind of like how to do that, like how to approach building something like that, how to build it, like you're saying, how to make the index and so on. Sounds like that's popular. Cool. Cool. So we'll plan to do some of that. Maybe then the question would be like, after the session, go through this doc and like really flag either with emojis or comments what you would really like to kind of request to be explained, and then over the weekend I'll scan through it and then pick a few, and then I'll figure out how we can do some workshops next week on breaking that idea down into components and how you would go about building that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and definitely one thing that I think we maybe had in the back of our heads but didn't realize is the fact that people have these great ideas for connecting Ethereum and Filecoin, but they might not necessarily know how. That's like a big knowledge gap. There are definitely some tutorials out there that I can think of, but we should probably have a session dedicated to that. Like, what tooling can you use to actually do this? That would be a good thing for next week.
Yeah, sounds great. Let's do it. Shall we jump to a different section? Let's see. How about we go for 10 more minutes and then we wrap? What does anybody?
I think Molly had suggested some earlier.
Which
I don't know if you went over them already.
I went through one, files and data,
Okay.
network visualizations. How about like if you have a section you want our whole combined attention, post it on the chat, and then we'll pick one of those, including network visualizations. Cool. So I think we have network visualizations and sensor networks. They're pretty related. Let's look at how much there is on each one. Let's see. Network visualizations, there's some cool ones, and then IoT and sensor networks. Some good ones as well. Great. Let's go through. Let's start with sensor networks and then move back to network visualization. I feel like I've thrown a bunch of ideas out on that stuff and not yet IoT. what other kind of public data feeds are there? There's a whole bunch of interesting ones. There's like weather and temperature and like airplane data and like. Yeah, open maps and GIS data for sure. That could be a whole category.
Does it query? I think they have some transit data stuff that they do.
Yeah, I think Query does some amount of transit data from like buses and so on.
New York City subway turnstile counts. Pretty specific.
Cool, and let's maybe go through network visualization for the last set. So let's do a few minutes on this one, and then we'll call it a day. And as a reminder, network visualization is like all kinds of things. You could visualize all the connections in a network. You can visualize specific protocols like PubSub, or you could visualize like the flow of content in the network, all kinds of things like that. This might also be really useful for E2, where E2 is using libp2p. So if you build like a libp2p network visualizer, then that'll be super useful for IPFS, for Filecoin, for E2, for Polkadot, and so on. By the way, there's a lot of really awesome ideas on mixing just like payment channels and Lippy2P, like just being able to do incentivized content distribution, sorry, incentivized connections, right? Like you can set up a relay and you can like connect to that relay, and that's like your way of like connecting to the rest of the world, and you pay for it. You could do like an incentivized like mesh network where like you're doing bandwidth sharing pretty easily. You can do yeah, you can do like this pops up paid delivery. You can do like an incentivized DHT. So DHTs are like really problematic. If you do like incentivized DHT, that's a good way of like breaking silver systems. Maybe I should do like a whole session on like mixing payment channels and Lippy2P. Like that might be like a good one. And I think a lot of the tooling for that is like Ethereum payment channels and state channels would be would mix super well with it right now. There's something really magical about being able to look at a globe and seeing network connections. Right now, this globe on the Filecoin page is like like fake data. It would be amazing to be able to see something like this for all kinds of decentralized protocols where like like being able to visualize the Ethereum network this way, or IPFS, or that would be like super cool. Like imagine being able to see like the block propagation of Ethereum for like nodes that are like choose to report it or something like that. There's a lot of really cool, inspiring use cases there. It also would be like a good UX for like storage market. You can be like, where are the storage facilities, and you can like explore the map and like, oh, that's interesting. And, like click a thing and bring up like photos of the facility. Like that might be pretty sweet.
I mean, would that be like terrorist risky? Not to be weird. Yes, and it's terrorist risky. Sorry, I screwed that up. Right. I was like, man.
Well,
yeah, you found the cybersecurity guy, just so you know. Yeah.
You don't have to give addresses. That's a great point. You don't have to give addresses. You could just have like a point on a city or something. And so like, it's in that city, you don't know where it is. And you can then see like, this node is in this city, but and then you can see like the photos of inside the facility and whatnot. I think with most of the stuff, like once you get access to IP addresses and so on, it's not that hard to find where people are, especially like data centers.
Yeah, I mean, AWS, like I just quit working for AWS, but like, yeah, we're pretty protective of that, but people would check in on their phones. So like, and then like WikiLeaks dumped like the data center map, which was always nice.
Wow, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Cool, awesome. Well, we've been going for about an hour and a half. I think we generated an amazing list of ideas. This is really awesome. I think, let's keep the document going. Let's share it with the rest of the hackers and see what other things people add. And then if I think the goal is to like maybe move some of this stuff over to this, because then we can like do categorization and searching and so on. But that'll take some amount of kind of like processing. We'll kind of discuss how to achieve that. But for now, if you want to comment through this doc and say what you would like to get explained, or from this list, like what things you would love to see kind of broken down in terms of how to build it with the available tech. Like really comment on whichever ones you think like would be awesome to see, and then over the weekend I'll take 2 or 3 or something, and then kind of think about a workshop where we do that.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing that we were able to come up with, we collectively were able to come up with so many ideas. And there's definitely like a really great diversity of people. I'm just scrolling through it now, kind of riffing off of other ideas. I did like the prompt at the beginning of yes and. And it is definitely a different session than what we've had before. It was, I think, 50% silence, just people sitting, kind of thinking about ideas, reading. So it's nice to have a change of pace, a little bit more of a chill session. I think we could probably wrap there, unless you have some final thoughts.
That sounds good. I think at the end of the day, like I think there's a lot of potential in a lot of these. Like even already there's a ton of really awesome ideas. Like being able to see some of these things built over the next 4 weeks would be really amazing. Some of these are like really great projects and tools. Some of them are really like potential like strong businesses and so on. There's a lot of really good things to hack on. I would say like keep adding for the next week, like getting more things on here. Go read through, see like how you get inspired, and like add more things. If there are missing categories, suggest them as well, and so on. I think through next week we'll keep adding to it.
Yeah, I think definitely our homework is going to be to figure out the system for surfacing up the ideas that people are most curious about. Figure out some sort of signaling, like you said, either with emojis or comments or something, and then we can hopefully integrate that into some of the workshops next week. That would be really awesome. Kind of just keep building, iterating on what people are interested in. So that'll be a ETHGlobal and Protocol Labs homework for the weekend, is figure out how to set that up for everybody. Awesome. Thank you everybody for showing up and sticking around for an hour and a half. This was really productive. Looking forward to people keep adding to it over the weekend too.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. See ya.
We'll see you all on Monday. Don't forget to stake. That's right, in the comments. See ya.